Hello, and welcome to the Herondale Boy Support Group. I'm Allie.
I'm Jenny.
I'm Melanie.
And we are here to help when we are not laughing our asses off immediately prior to starting intros and getting off topic before we
And
can
yet
even
you
begin.
still managed to get the intro right.
I did! It's one of my special skills, is, not fucking up the intro.
I gotta live up to the hype next time, because I think I'm doing it next time.
You guys are both fine on the intros. It's me who's the problem. For whatever reason, the intro.
I'm the problem. It's me.
It's me.
It is me.
It's
I don't know why.
This is real. This is me. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be now.
Oh boy. We're here to talk about Herondale Boys.
We are.
At some point. But before that, how's everybody doing? New year, new us, new book.
New Herondale Boy. Oh, can't wait.
New series for me.
New series for Melanie.
Melanie has not read this one before.
I have not.
So it'll be a first read for Melanie. It is a second read for myself and Ginny. But
yeah, and a recent read because the
Chain of Thorns just came out last year.
Came out
January-ish.
I own them all, but I hadn't read them yet.
Well, we've already established that reading books and buying books are two entirely disconnected
Exactly.
They're both hobbies.
I just bought 2 books this past week.
Oh yeah? Which book did you buy?
I bought Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen. They were like book talk books that I had been seeing a lot, and they had pretty spade edges, so I was like immediately mine.
I like pirates and mermaids.
Those
things appeal to me.
Tell us how they are. You'll have to tell us.
When I get to them.
Yeah, exactly. If you ever read them.
Apparently, according to TikTok, I'm reading.
Us, and then we'll get
Listen,
back.
according to my whole according to TikTok, I'm reading my whole TBR this year. So
apparently,
right. I saw that. I was like, ooh, well, that's...
There are not enough hours in the year for me to read all of
especially all the books that I bought when back in September, October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your book haul books.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Plus the couple that I've bought since then.
I will say I have been starting this year off on a reading start. I've read 2 non-Shadowhunter books since Christmas. So, there's that. I've read, what is it? It's Homeland from the Forgotten Realms series. I read that. I got that one for Christmas and I was really excited. So I read that one immediately and finished it like right on New Year's. So I didn't technically read it this year, but I'm claiming it as this year anyway. So I can say that I started this year reading. And then I'm most of the way through Outlander. I have like 70 pages left. And I know that was posted on our Instagram as like my summer wanted to read. And obviously that didn't happen, but here we are. It's happening.
At least reading
the book I was reading last spring, so over the summer. So don't worry.
It happens.
And some books, like, Allie, this is your 3rd attempt or something? So, like, some books just take us a minute to get there.
It's true.
I just find trouble. Me, personally, I have to figure out how to find time after work, because I'm always just, like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's, like, reading is a great hobby, but it's also, like, a time-consuming hobby. Like, you need to take the time to actually sit down and do it. It's one of those things that you need to work into your routine. And it's not a zero-effort hobby, either. Like, reading takes significantly more effort than, like, turning on the TV to, like, X show or whatever.
So you actually, like, if it's whatever show, maybe you've seen it before, you don't really have to pay attention. Whereas if you're reading a book, you're going to want to pay attention so that you can enjoy the story.
And, like, the brain cells to read. Like, I could
and
just
anybody
turn on
who knows
Superstore
us
and watch Superstore again for the 97th time.
With brain cells, anybody who knows us knows that we share a brain cell. So any given day, one of us could have the brain cell.
There is only the one.
Yeah, that's true. I've been trying to read more. Like, I mean, actually, the podcast has been helping me set aside that reading time more, just because I know that we're getting into these books that are now longer.
Chonky
books. Yeah, like,
chonky.
I mean, this one, Chain of Gold, is around Infernal Devices length, but I know that the next ones are getting chunky. And I know the Dark Artifices.
I look at them on my shelf back there. Yeah, they're chunky.
Too. Yeah, so just knowing that that's coming up and trying to pace out my reading a little bit better for this podcast and has been helping. And then I'm determined to read some library books. I did read one book already this year. I didn't like it, but we were far into it that I was like, well, like, I was like, it was a really, really fast read. So I was like, okay, I'm making really good time. And I was like, I don't know if I like it that much. Maybe I'll get better. I got to like far, like two 2 out of 4 parts into it, I'm like, I don't know if it's getting better. I got to like 3 parts into it, and I was like, it's just, nope, we're never. But then I'm like, but we're only like 100 pages away from the end at this point, and it's taking me not any time at all to read this, and I might as well, I guess. So.
Ginny's
Yeah.
decided that she's no longer reading sci-fi authors' pandemic projects. She's decided that's just been.
Yeah, I've read like
for
2.
Oof.
Yeah, I've read 2. I think I read a John Scalzi, and then I read a Brandon Sanderson. Was this one that I just read, and they're both like decently known authors, at least to like. I'm not a big sci-fi or fantasy person yet. I want to be, and that so I know like especially like Sanderson has written a lot of really well-known fantasy stories, and I was excited to try and read something small, you know, that I didn't have to go ahead and commit already to a big fantasy series. So I was like, okay, let me just read this like one-off little, and it's not full fantasy either. It's a little futuristic, leaning toward the sci-fi realm, and it did not hit for me. But yeah, it's the second book where some author has been like, I wrote this during the pandemic because I wanted to do something different. I felt like changing it up a little bit, and then I was like, nah.
Listen, the pandemic was a weird time for everybody.
It was a weird time for everyone.
Yeah, we support authors wanting to do something different. It just so happens that sometimes that something different is not for us.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely. Like I know, like one of our friends, we all know our friend who has recommended me a few of Sanderson's like actual series. So I'm like, I will actually take the time and try and get into those. So I'm not gonna just I'm not gonna base my opinion off of this one book that I didn't like that was a pandemic experimental project
from the pandemic. Like
exactly.
You cannot judge people for their pandemic projects.
Yeah, there were some weird music albums that came out in the pandemic too. You know, like just the art came out of the pandemic. It was
the pandemic gave us Panic at the Disco's Viva Las Vengeance, and like honestly, that is the garbage album. You heard it here.
Well,
I hate it.
All right. Well,
anyway,
shall we get into this? Because we got a long summary today.
I do have a long summary. Part 1, Chain of Gold, chapters 1 through 7. Consider yourself
technically
warned.
The prologue through chapter 7.
The prologue through chapter 7, and all of those days past things happening in between. But
okay, so let's get into it. This is the summary for Chain of Gold, the prologue, chapter 7. This is your spoiler warning. One night, as a little girl, Lucy Herondale wanders into the forest and gets lost. She's alone and scared. A voice tells her not to scream, to not lure the fairies. The mysterious boy leads her out of the forest, seeming to know the way. Lucy asks the boy his name, but he doesn't provide it. He disappears after leading her back home. James Herondale waits on a roof. He's hunting a demon. Suddenly he hears a scream, one that he knows all too well. The scream of Matthew Fairchild, his parabatai. As James attempts to fight off the demon, the ground splits beneath him and begins to shift. Everything around him turns to shadow for a moment before it all goes back to normal. His friends come to help. Thomas Lightwood, Christopher Lightwood, and of course, Matthew. They're called the Merry Thieves. Thomas shares some news. His Aunt Tatiana is coming back to London with his cousin Grace Blackthorne. James seems very interested in the topic, and specifically Grace. James wonders, though. He and Grace promised each other that they would be together one day, yet she didn't tell him she was coming. Sometime later, Cordelia Carstairs stares out the window of her carriage with wonder. She and her brother Alistair, and then their mother Sona, have moved to London. When the carriage pulls up to their new home, there are 3 people standing outside, Tessa and her children, Lucy and James. The story everyone is being told is that the Carstairs have moved to London so that Cordelia and Lucy can train together, as they are to be parabatai. But this isn't the full truth, as in reality, Elias Carstairs is awaiting trial. He's been accused of allying with werewolves in an attempt to attack a clan of vampires, something that goes against the Accords. The next night, there is a ball taking place to welcome the Carstairs to London. James appears and asks Cordelia to dance. Her heart races as they do, as Cordelia has had a crush on James for years. And on top of that, James appears to be flirting with Cordelia. Their dance is cut short, though, when James notices someone over Cordelia's shoulder. James abandons their dance and drifts over to the mysterious girl who has just arrived. Matthew swoops in and begins dancing with Cordelia, saving her from humiliation. He explains that the girl is Grace. Cordelia's heart breaks as she realizes that James is interested in Grace and not herself like she hoped. While all of this is happening, Lucy sees someone she never thought she would see again, a mysterious boy from the forest that helped her years ago. She makes her way through the crowd toward him. He pulls Lucy from the crowd and into an empty room. Lucy asks him what he's doing there, and he remarks that he never told her who he was. The boy points out how no one else but Lucy can see him and reveals that he's Jesse Blackthorne, Tatiana's son, who died many years ago. He's a ghost, but not an ordinary ghost, as Lucy is able to touch him. He notes that if Lucy can see him, then she is no ordinary girl either. Going back in time, it's now the year 1900, and James has recently been expelled from the Shadowhunter Academy. As a result, his parents sent him to Cirenworth Hall in hopes that he would figure out his life. Cirenworth also happens to be the resident of the Carstairs residence. He and Lucy are spending a month there, and while it's not Idris, James doesn't hate being there. While training with Lucy and Cordelia one day, James collapses from unbearable pain. He has scalding fever, a disease unique to Shadowhunters. Despite him being contagious, Cordelia visits James, as she previously had scalding fever. She reads to him, keeping him company for the many days he's sick. When James begins to travel into the shadow world, Cordelia begs him to hold on, to stay. James manages to get out that he's cold, and seeing no other way to help, Cordelia lays herself next to James on the bed, using her own body heat to warm him. He manages to pull himself back from the shadows, but Cordelia doesn't move. Back in the present, a picnic being enjoyed by the young Shadowhunters is interrupted by a demon attack, but just as quickly as the demon attacks, it leaves. The damage has been done. A young Shadowhunter boy is badly hurt, and no one knows what to think of it. Before anyone can process what just happened, more demons attack. The group leaps into action, and while they drive the demons away, it's not without more of them being hurt. Thomas approaches James. He's desperate to do something to help his sister, Barbara Lightwood. An idea begins to form in James's mind. He tells Thomas to gather Matthew and Christopher, for this idea is going to need all four of them. Lucy takes Cordelia from the from the infirmary.
Do you not
We're not
inventory?
You're doing great. You're doing great.
It's a lot. Okay. Lucy takes Cordelia from the Lucy takes Cordelia from the infirmary.
Cordelia in stock.
Under the guise that she's taking her friend home. In reality, she's taking them both to Chiswick House, the residence of Tatiana and Grace. Lucy is on a mission, as she was told by Jessamine, the Institute Ghost, that there is a ghost at Chiswick House that may be able to help. Back with James and the Merry Thieves, James has explained his plan. He's going to purposely send himself into the Shadow Realm. The other boys initially protest, but they know that James is going to do it anyway, with or without their help. After a few failed attempts, Will bangs on the underside of the block door, demanding to know what's going on. With it being now or never, Matthew says that James is cursed and is seeing the place he belongs. This works, and James enters the Shadow Realm. At Chiswick House, Lucy and Cordelia split up, agreeing to meet back at the gates later. Lucy climbs vines on the side of the building and settles onto a balcony. The doors before her fly open, revealing Jesse standing in the middle of a ballroom, and he does not seem happy to see her. James is now fully in the Shadow Realm. He looks around, seeing the skyline of London, and to his surprise, the dust in his mouth tastes like bitter salt. He's never been able to touch anything in this realm before. Then he sees a flicker in the distance. As he moves toward it, the cold sensation of this realm begins to fade, and he steps back into the world again. Lucy steps into the ballroom and takes notice of how run down it is. Lucy asks Jesse what exactly happened to him, but he changes the subject. Before he answers any more questions, Jesse makes Lucy swear that she won't tell anyone about his existence, and she agrees. Jesse gives Lucy what information he can, that because he is basically of two worlds, he can sometimes sense things that don't belong. The conversation is interrupted by a flare of light. Lucy recognizes it as witchlight and immediately knows that Cordelia is in trouble. Cordelia is in the greenhouse. The tentacle of a demon is wrapped around her leg and is dragging her across the ground. Something grabs her hand, and when she looks up to see who it is, she sees the face of James. While James holding on to her, she manages to grab hold of Cortana, the sword that has been passed down in family for generations, and cuts free of the demon. Cordelia and James run and manage to fight off the demon and escape. The next day, Cordelia is invited to tea by Anna Lightwood. Anna reveals her true intentions behind the invitation. She needs Cordelia's help. Anna believes they're all in danger, but before she can elaborate, Matthew bursts into the apartment. Dun-dun, we're done!
There's a lot that happened there. Yeah.
There's a lot happening.
Oh my god.
So much.
So much.
So much.
So much.
Should I give like my overall thoughts and then we go into details, or should I give overall thoughts at the end?
Let's maybe talk about this. We said that we were going to talk about some of the characters and kind of give that rundown because we have a pretty lengthy cast.
Many.
Sounds good to me.
I think it's time for Grandkid Roundup.
Grandkid Roundup.
I mean, it's not Grandkid, but it's the vibe.
Exactly. It is the vibe. They've got this cool illustration in the book that I've got. And that's what I was showing you all here of the characters, which is nice. You don't always get that, you know?
Yeah. So
which branch of the family do we start with?
the Herondales, of course.
Of course, the
Obviously.
Herondale.
So Will and Tessa have married, and they have had 2 babies. They have their eldest boy,
Some kiddos.
James, also known as Jamie Herondale, or Goatface Herondale, though he much prefers the former to that. But
Not Jimbo
James,
Herondale.
not Jimbo
Jimbo.
Herondale, has made
Not
it
Jim.
implied. Not
Jamie.
Jamie or James, which is what he goes by with most everybody except for those who are closest to him. As their eldest boy, he can see and go into the Shadow Realm, which definitely does not make me think of Yu-Gi-Oh! At all. But that is that child. And then they have Lucy, who is their youngest daughter, named for the first book that they spoke about. And she obviously can see special ghosts.
Yeah. It's been said all the Herondales can see ghosts because they have that.
Yeah, she's special, and that she can see special
Lucy is
ghosts.
special, yeah.
She's even more
James and
special
Lucy both have special juice because of Tessa's warlock
right.
blood. And we learned a little bit in those side stories we talked about of these things, but also in here, it's referenced that that Jem is looking into who Tessa's father actually was. And apparently it's a greater demon, but we don't know more yet. And that is kind of the explanation we're given behind these enhanced special abilities.
We also have the Lightwoods, but there's 2 branches of the Lightwood family.
Yep.
So, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, with Gideon and Sophie, there's their oldest daughter, Barbara Lightwood.
Yep.
I believe there was also a mention of another daughter.
Yes, Eugenia.
Eugenia
second daughter,
Lightwood.
yes.
She's mentioned, but we haven't seen her.
Mm-hmm.
There is Thomas Lightwood as well.
Who has grown up. He's described in these early stories as the scrawny little thing, scrawny, sickly thing, and now he is notably massive.
I think they only have the 3 kids, right?
Yes.
And then Cicely and Gabriel have Anna Lightwood.
Yep, their oldest.
They have Christopher Lightwood.
A lady killer. She is. Hot damn.
They have Christopher Lightwood. And then there was a little boy. I don't think I wrote down his name.
Alexander.
Yep. Alexander.
Oh, he's a baby.
Oh, yeah. You should have remembered that one.
Yep, yeah.
Anyway, Alexander.
Yeah. Alexander is a bab in this.
He is a bab.
Like a little baby. And then Christopher, is one of our...
I should have clocked that, and I didn't.
And then Anna is the eldest.
Christopher
we read about
is
Anna.
floaty. He's a lot like Henry, which is interesting.
That's true.
He's an inventor. He's always spilling things and, has these
Scientist,
weird ideas.
if you will.
Yeah. He's trying to combine mundane weapons and Shadowhunter runes, which is an interesting pursuit that he has. And then Anna's a lady killer. She dresses like a gentleman of the day, She's very into the ladies. She's definitely not had her heart broken at all, and that's definitely not why she's acting out. Nothing like that at all. Nah, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. She has her own flat though.
She has her own flat.
Yeah.
She is independent.
She is independent.
And she's known to get into trouble.
We also have the Fairchilds.
We do have the Fairchilds.
There's Charles Fairchild, who is the oldest son of Henry
Buford.
and Charlotte. Yes, I'm sorry, Charles Buford. Don't forgive me, Charles Buford, who is the oldest son of Henry and Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is my love, Matthew Fairchild.
Matthew Fairchild. Sweet, sweet, sweet bab. Sweet baby boy. Everyone
would you like to take
Matthew.
Would you like to do the honors of introducing our last family, Jenny?
Sure. I guess the Blackthorns?
Oh, I was thinking the Carstairs, but yes, them too.
Oh, yes, the Carstairs.
We forgot to take proper inventory. We forgot the Carstairs.
We did.
No, I forgot the Blackthorns. Jenny forgot the Carstairs.
I did. Well, I'll introduce them both, I guess, here. So, the Blackthorns I'll save for last because they're kind of like, they're not related. Well, I guess
they are, but not as.
But the Carstairs family, so it's technically Jem Carstairs' cousin, right? Elias is.
Yes. No, it's his uncle.
Yep.
Elias
uncle?
is his uncle.
Elias is his uncle. Cordelia
Okay,
is his
so
cousin.
yeah. So Elias, who is Cordelia's father, of course. So there's the relation to Jem Carstairs. So we did see Elias Carstairs in the end of Clockwork Princess with Cortana, actually.
Yes.
And Will did not take Cortana. So we see what happened to Cortana. Cortana went to Cordelia. Cordelia Carstairs, the daughter of Elias Carstairs and then Sona. I guess, well, we don't know, her maiden name, I don't think. At least not at this point.
Hansha.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's some
It was
Persian
mentioned.
name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was mentioned once, I think. But it's not a family name that we know. Anyways, so yes, we have Sona, who is here in London, to have brought her kids. So Alistair is the eldest son. We met him in short stories. Alistair, nobody likes Alistair.
No.
He's
Punch him in the face.
Well,
yeah,
one
everyone
person
wants
tolerates
to punch him.
Alistair, interestingly enough.
One person tolerates Alistair, but that is it. And Cordelia tolerates Alistair because she has to. And there's some sibling relationship there, but
Oh yeah,
it's definitely Alistair is a problem, right?
Alistair's a problem.
And he's acting a little big for his britches, and whatever. But Elias is not around right now, so we have Alistair, and then we have Cordelia, who is our main protagonist, who starts the book.
Yes.
This definitely is a full cast kind of story for sure, but Cordelia is the one who is our main girl who starts off the story.
She's on the cover.
And she is on the cover of this one. So yeah.
Indeed.
Cordelia has Cortana
Blackthorns
too. And then we've got the Blackthorns, yep. So they're on the side. They're also coming to town. And then we've got Tatiana Blackthorn, who we know about from Infernal Devices. She cray-cray.
She
made a name Lightwood.
Just a little bit.
She is originally a Lightwood.
She is originally a Lightwood.
She's Gabriel and Gideon's sister.
Yes. And then she married Rupert Blackthorn,
Yes.
who died in the events of the Infernal Devices, along with her father, Benedict Lightworm.
No, it's Eggs Benedict Lightworm, Ginny.
That's his full name when speaking about
exactly. His entire name. Eggs Benedict Lightworm, who also died when we saw them both die in Infernal Devices. So Rupert is not around, but she had a child, Jesse Blackthorn, who died when the runes were put on him. He did not survive.
Well, he survived for a little while after.
No, he died when he was 17.
Yeah. Okay, you're right.
He had the first.
Yeah, he was sickly for a while though.
Yeah.
And then they tried to do the runes thing, and that was not good. And then he died not long after. And so he's dead, but he's a ghost now. So that's a new thing.
He's dead.
I guess.
He's a special ghost.
You're right. He's dead.
He's a special ghost.
We've also been told that Tatiana did some necromancy thing. So yeah, he's back as a ghost, a special ghost. And then we have Grace Blackthorn, who is Tatiana's ward. So she is not biologically related to Tatiana. Grace is actually a Cartwright.
Yes.
But her parents both died, and so Tatiana,
as happens,
for some reason, decided to take her on as a ward.
Tatiana, who does not like Shadowhunters, who does not like them at all, was just like, oh yes, this child I shall house in my decrepit mansion that I'm not keeping up, and feed and
train.
Train? Question mark?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I think she only has the one rune. I think she has the voyance rune.
Keep alive. I shall keep her alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do the bare minimum.
So that's our grandkid roundup, or just child roundup.
It's a big cast.
There's so many characters,
and we are gonna have to keep track of basically all these people.
We are. They are all.
So yeah.
That's why I definitely recommend reading the Infernal Devices before reading this one, because having the context of who the parents are helps keep everybody straight.
The events of Infernal Devices are just briefly mentioned, so if you haven't read it, you're gonna be like, "What is this? Who are these people?"
What is the Clockwork War?
They mention the Clockwork War. They mention Henry's injury. They mention.
Yeah.
They mention Mortmain.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, obviously, they're still recent-ish events. These are happening.
Obviously, but as you were saying, if you haven't read the Infernal Devices before this, you're gonna be like, What?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, there's
That's all.
enough that you could read these, but like, yeah, it's definitely the context is
Context
really
is
helpful
helpful.
in this situation.
Context is helpful keeping track of all the kids.
Yeah.
I'm even.
for sure.
I have context, and I'm having trouble keeping track of all of them.
It
takes
gets
a minute. It takes a minute, but it does get easier for sure.
Anyway, let's get into what's happened to our children. So
What
we have-
hasn't happened?
That's true.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, right now, this is in what 1903, and they do make a point of
think.
saying that like this is like this demon that Matthew and James go to take care of is like the first demon they have seen in all their
In a long
years
time,
shadow hunting,
yeah.
basically. So
Mhm.
it's stated a few times that we are in a time of peace, that the whole clockwork wars or whatever that was long behind us, and things are really great right now until they're not, obviously.
Obviously, it's a
Yeah,
Shadowhunter book.
it's brought
Of
up
course.
that on patrol, like the Merry Thieves are not even in their gear. You know, like they've just taken that patrol is something that they do, but they don't expect to find demons, and they obviously haven't found them in forever. And so it's an interesting occurrence when they do run into these demons, obviously.
Yeah. So they're kind of just being kids right now, but then they also, in the back of their minds, they're like, we're also Shadowhunters.
Yeah,
And
that's a good way to
Will
put it.
mentions
I mean,
being
there's-
concerned about this. He's,
He is.
concerned that they'll not know how to react when should danger come.
Dilf will.
Tilf Will. Listen, I'm
Here
so
he
glad
is.
that Tessa was
With
getting a
his
piece of that.
graying
The
hair.
first 2 chapters, I was like, yes, he deserves it.
With his graying hair.
Right? Yeah. Ugh. Silver Fox era.
I'm
coming.
so into it. I am.
Allie's gay, and she's so into this.
Yep.
Roll Alaska, people. Listen, just because IRL, I would no, absolutely not. But like, it's nice to think about sometimes, you know.
Listen, I've said this before. Like, if we're specifically saying, like, because, my bias is Jace. IRL, Jace would be way too much for me. But, like,
Exactly.
a girl
Yeah.
can dream.
Right.
Exactly. I like thinking about it. I have eyes. I have an imagination. But anyway, Will's still
Yeah.
there. I'm here for it. And Will's a good dad. We haven't seen like a lot of his dadly moments yet on screen, but he's a good dad. He's great.
When they mentioned that the boys, Christopher, Thomas, Matthew, and James of the Merry Thieves, I'm like, oh, that's where this name comes from. Because I see the names of characters and like things all the time on like social media, and I knew that they came from like this series since it's the one I haven't read yet, but it's like good to know the context of what it is.
Yep, they got this room at the Devil's Tavern, and then they just
They
become
have a
patrons there.
clubhouse.
And yeah, and then even the downworlders who like are there, they don't mind those four specifically. They're like, yeah, those boys.
Shadowhunters are
Those
fine.
boys are
Shadowhunters are fine. And so they get greeted by the bartenders and whatever when they visit, and yeah.
And they've suited this little room to meet their needs, They've got like a little science set up, and then James is keeping all of his books that he wouldn't be allowed to keep in the Institute, and Matthew has his collection of waistcoats, and
it's real cute.
It's so good. I love the clubhouse for them.
Yeah.
Huh.
And Lucy and our honorary members, they're sometimes, they're invited sometimes.
Lucy, Cordelia, yeah.
Cordelia has not been invited yet because Cordelia
not been
is
invited.
new in town.
I thought she
And-
was. She was, because she would spend the summer with. She would spend the summers there.
No.
No.
Maybe I'm getting things mixed up. Maybe it's
Just
just that James is like cool with her.
James and Cordelia know each other, and Lucy and Cordelia know each other, but Cordelia does not know anybody else.
That I think I'm just
Cordelia
getting things
has
mixed
not
up.
been to London before.
Right, I think I'm just getting things mixed up.
Yeah.
It happens. But she's new in town, and
She is
you know,
new in town.
she has that eldest daughter burden where she's like, I need to make sure that everybody likes me, and I need to make sure that I make all these friends, these powerful friends who are going to be able to,
She's
got this
younger
concern
than
for her father.
She's younger than Alistair, right? She's the second
She
child.
is younger. Yeah.
Okay,
But the
I'm
eldest
just making
daughter.
sure I have that. Yeah, I'm just making sure I have the
Yes.
it together. Clearly, I don't.
Yeah.
So-
And the thing about most of these siblings is they're not very far apart in age either.
No.
Yeah.
They're all in the same age group, more or less.
Right.
Except for Charles Buford.
Charles and Anna are like older enough that they're like doing adulty things to some extent.
like
I mean, Anna is just doing Anna, but she lives in
there's-
her own flat and she's not at the institute all the time.
toward the end
Mhm.
of this set of chapters, James makes some mention of sometimes he forgets that Charles isn't like some banker or something like that. So it's just like that's the vibe of Charles, that he's like older and like an adult.
Charles, I think, is 25 by the math.
Okay.
I forget exactly
Because
what I pulled them in the book.
he
It
is-
might be. Yeah.
Mr. Charles Buford is at the very end of Infernal Devices.
Yes.
Exactly. So I think that puts him around 25 right now. So he is not a child. He's not in the same realm as the others.
Right.
Which is why we sort of don't see him hang out with the group that often.
He also thinks he's too cool for everybody.
Of course he does.
Uh,
He's that older brother.
I forget where we get this insight, but Matthew makes a comment. It might have been in one of the short stories where Charles is constantly on his mother's coattails because he wants to be the next council after Charlotte.
Well, he does say that because his mother is an Idris, he is representing her interests right now.
Oh, I hate that
Yeah.
conversation. That conversation
Yeah,
made me
so
so
we-
mad.
we get that. So,
But it's just the vibe. We'll get there, I'm sure. I like Cordelia. She's fun.
I like Cordelia. I
she
think
is
she's
good.
great.
Yeah, she is a good
I
name.
also like your Cordelia a lot.
My Cordelia. No problem. Where is she?
Your
I
Cornelia.
don't know.
Oh, yeah, it's not.
She's in a cone.
It's not much like the book character, but
She's not. She's got heart.
she
She's got
is.
that
She
in
is hard.
common. But beyond that, Cordelia.
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to like talk about things. Should we talk about like relationships between the characters? Should we talk about stuff that happens? There's a lot that happens because it's a lot of chapters.
That's true. Did you say so? You just wanted to say something about like first impressions, or is that kind of what you've done here?
Well, I mean, I can go over. It's just like general first impressions of the book.
Yeah. I mean, I want to hear.
So, I know the title is "We Are Not Accepting Critiques," but I have critiques. It jumps around in timeline and between POVs so much that I'm having trouble keeping track of what's happening when. And I texted both Allie and Ginny. I was like, can either of you confirm what the present day of this is? Because it keeps going, days pass and it gives a year. But then it doesn't like, when you're going back to the present, it doesn't say that you're like back in present day. So I'm like, is this still happening in the past? I'm confused.
I disagree.
I mean, I agree that it jumps around quite a bit. And I would say on a second read through it, it's easier for me to keep up with. So I understand that you might be struggling a little at this point.
I'm sure it'll get easier.
That's fair. My first read is also many years removed from this podcast.
And it just felt like whenever it felt like a chapter was coming to a good end, it would just be like days pass, and I'd be like, oh my god.
So I appreciated that because it gives us context on because usually it's given us
That's
context on what's
fine.
happened in the
I
in the
appreciate that. It's just a lot, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like some of it was unnecessary.
I feel like a simple solution could have been like saying the present day, like what the year it is in the present day. It would have helped.
And I also
a
feel
lot
like some of this
personally
days
to me,
past
too.
stuff could have been explained in like a couple of paragraphs and not like 5 pages.
I guess there's a choice to either make it a full active scene on its own or to just say it in the past.
And I'm not saying I don't like the days past stuff. It just jumps around a lot. And even with the different POVs, I'm like, everything's happening. And maybe it was just because I was writing the summary this week that I was like, when it was jumping from POV to POV, I was like, this is going to sound like really choppy because you're jumping from James going to Shadow World, and then then you switch to Lucy and Cordelia, and then you switch back to James.
So that is an issue you run into when you have a big cast. When you make a choice to have that many people as POV characters as part of your main cast, then it does start to feel like that.
And like I said, maybe it was just because I was doing the summary this week, and I was like, how am I going to make this flow?
It is hard to write a summary when there's all the POV ships, because you have to write it differently. You have to like write it as chunks of time instead of as it happens in the book. It requires
So
I
don't dislike it. Not that I dislike it. I think it's just that because it's more characters than I've previously been used to kind of thing. And I feel like even with like say Mortal Instruments, where you have, you know, the main group, I feel like it doesn't jump around in POV as much as this one does.
I mean, I would agree, honestly, that this one just, yeah, with the amount of main cast characters just jumping around is like a thing that's going to happen here. And I feel like, honestly, you know, with this being the, what, one, two, three, like, you know, like this is like, what, the fourth or fifth
Mm-hmm.
series, you know, I think there is some expectation from Cassie Clare of like, people have read at least one of these series before.
Yeah.
Um, you know, while anyone could pick up this series and read it as the first one, again, we've already talked about how like context is a lot. Like there's a
Yeah.
it's you'll miss a lot if you haven't read at least, you know, like this one is definitely, you know, directly related to Infernal Devices, and which was the first series, which, you know, maybe not everyone has read Infernal Devices, but, you know, she explains things like, you know, like runes and, you know, like the jargon like very very quickly, just so that like
Mm-hmm.
if someone has never read before, there's still like that one line of context,
Mhm.
but it's definitely not explained the same way that Infernal Devices and Mortal Instruments explained things.
This is also the story of Shadowhunters. This is a story of Shadowhunter and not the story of an outsider in the Shadowhunter
True.
world, which the Infernal Devices is a story of an outsider in the Shadowhunter world, especially in the first
And
arc.
Mortal
We get
Instruments
Tessa.
is kind of too,
And
if you
Mortal
think
Instruments
about
is
it.
the same way, because Clary doesn't have that deep tie.
Mm-hmm.
She is technically a Shadowhunter, obviously, and Tessa is obviously technically a Shadowhunter in
But
some
they
ways
didn't
as
grow
well.
up knowing that.
Exactly. So jumping into this book is a lot harder because you're getting the story from someone who's familiar with all these things, someone who wouldn't need to understand or explain what a rune is, someone who wouldn't need to explain what the Institute is or what it's for or what the Enclave is. But when you have the narrator who hasn't been exposed to these things and needs to know what these things are, then it's easier to sort of introduce the reader to this world.
Yeah.
And
So, like,
continuing
I
on
think...
that, when
Go
we're
ahead.
talking about this big cast, in in a way, the other series we can still pinpoint a protagonist. We can still pinpoint a main character. Like Melanie brought up the Mortal Instruments. It's very much still Clary's story. And this one, when we talk about our main character, it's Cordelia? Question mark, because everyone in here has such a role to play in the story, and it really is their collective group story, which makes the character shifting necessary, but also confusing to keep up with at first, especially since we go from what is essentially Tessa's story to everybody's story. You know,
Yeah.
we do have to take inventory of our children.
I think it's
and
just
make sure
gonna
that
take...
they're all being told.
I think it's just gonna take some getting used to for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Once I get used to the jumping around, I think I'll be less frustrated.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, say that I like it being a Shadowhunter story, you know, as Ali was saying, it's like because we've gotten the outsider coming in
Mm-hmm.
like twice now, you know, which we did need that for the context, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
great, you know, it's a great way to build the world. But you know, with this being like like I said, like several books, you know, several series into the world, I think
Mm-hmm.
that you know, it works well that Cassie Clare can do that and be like, you know, people have read Shadowhunters books already. We don't need another Shadowhunter series of this
A
outsider coming into
Rooney? A
Shadowhunters.
rune? A what? A tattoo on your
Um,
skin? Yeah, we don't need that.
Right.
yeah. I also, if we're talking about general thoughts, I also have predictions, but I can do that at the end if we think that might fit better.
I love to hear predictions at the end, I think.
Okay. Every time a new character was introduced in the family, I'd be like, they have another kid?
The
There's
Shadowhunters
more.
been busy. They live fast, die young, you know?
Exactly. They gotta pop them out fast before they die.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gotta pop out more in case the other ones die.
I really like Lucy and Cordelia's friendship. They just seem like...
Yes. Oh my God.
I love them. I love that Lucy is writing a book about Cordelia, and I'm like, can the beautiful Cordelia be a real book? Because I'd read it.
Where is a story about me, guys? Like, where is the dash?
We had this conversation in our text. In our text.
Like, yeah, where is it?
And I countered with, well, you Allie was upset because neither myself or Ginny have written a story about her, and I countered back with, well, you haven't written a story about me.
Well, you know,
yeah, we're all slacking here, I guess. We're all slacking.
Just saying. Of us, I'm the most story worthy, and I would have the most interesting adventures.
Okay.
I also want to point out that, like, so I have always been under the impression, I feel like we've all been, that Magnus Bane is the one character that's, like, consistent through all these stories.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like now it's Ragnar Fell.
He's been in
Oh,
some
it's
of these
about to
stories.
become the new
mentioned.
Magnus Bane temporarily.
Exactly.
Because he gets mentioned here.
He does.
And he's been in every series and book story that we, you know, even the short stories. I'm like, why is Ragnar Fell not the main character?
It's
We
the
hear from him a
warlock
lot. We
thing.
also hear from Katarina Loss a lot. We hear from our
Yeah.
warlock friends.
Yep.
It's because they're warlocks, but I'm just like,
It is.
hello, Ragnar Fell. I never realized he was like in as much need as he was.
Yeah.
It's fine. Every Shadowhunter needs their pet warlock.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Speaking of pets, can we talk
Oscar
about
Wilde.
Oscar Wilde? He's got
Oscar Wilde.
he's got just the presence, and it's necessary, and I love him.
Yes.
I want
We
a
love
puppy.
that there's a dog. Matthew needs a dog. A dog is good for Matthew.
Mm.
Matthew
It's
needs a
actually
cat.
his emotional support animal, like, actually.
It is.
For real.
He needs it.
He needs that.
So interestingly enough, let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about like the story, what's happened in like our characters. We'll start with Matthew since that was kind of the natural transition here. Interesting to note that the last time we saw Matthew was in the short stories, and we saw that he was tricked by Alistair Carstairs into believing that he was, you know, not his father's true child, but a bastard son of his mother and Gideon Lightwood. And in order to prove that out, he sought this truth potion from a fairy that he fed to his mother and resulted in his mother being hurt and losing the pregnancy that she was carrying at the time. And so Matthew is devastated and blames himself for that. In the next short story we see him in, we see him briefly in Anna's short story. And he's drunk. And we're seeing the threads of that every time he appears on screen here as well. His eyes are described as suspiciously bright. You know, he's got half a bottle. I think the first time we see him on screen is at the party. Is that the ball? No,
because he appears in the
Because he
battle.
appears in the beginning.
James.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the very next time, James is pulling him out from underneath a pool table, having gotten into his father's port. So, you know, we obviously see this kind of destructive pattern beginning with Matthew.
You know, it's mentioned that they've discovered that Eratzes can sober a person, and they use it on Matthew, knowing that it will sober him up.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
I just want to give him a hug because he's using alcohol to hide his pain, and I'm like, it's okay.
And we all know this, and we have this context, but like, you see the Merry Thieves and how they react, and they don't know how to react to it. You know, they don't know how to deal with it. Like, the actual first scene, we see Matthew when they're going to the Devil's Tavern. Everyone else goes up and James stays behind, and James brings up a bottle of wine. And it's just like, it stings a little bit, you know? It stings a bit.
I was never planning on reading the short stories, really, before going into reading Chain of Cold. Like, even if I was going to read Tales of Shadowhunter Academy, I was going to read it in the future because it mostly focuses on characters from Mortal Instruments. So I would have been that person that didn't have any context, and I would have been like, huh, what's going on?
Exactly, and I think, like, with the context, we're hyper aware of it, and we're reading into Matthew more. I think that the first
I
time
didn't
you
read
this
into it the first time, with the context, actually.
Yeah, but with the context that we have now, it's a little painful, you know?
Well, which, you know, that's how you can think of it, too, is, like, the characters don't have the context, you know,
no, they don't.
of knowing what happens, so they don't get it.
And, like, Shadowhunters are pretty sheltered, like, obviously aside from the demons. Like, for the realness of life, they're pretty sheltered. Like, who among them, aside from, you know, anyway, who among them has countered a drunk, you know? Who among them knows what an alcoholic looks like? Who among them have seen these things, you know?
Yeah.
And so, they just don't know.
If we're talking about Matthew, the next step, I guess, is to talk about his peripety, James.
I do want to say that I love that their intro, it feels very Will and Jem, their intro.
Oh, it
you know?
does.
Oh, it does.
It's yeah. If like as soon as I was like, man, it's the same thing. They start in battle and then whoop, there's the parabatai right there, and you're like yo, and yeah.
Truly bonded by something beyond the plane, and it's good.
It's good.
James Herondale, oldest child of Will and
Jamie
Tessa.
boy.
It's hard because we know that he struggles with stuff from the short stories. But in this book, you don't see that a lot. You kind of see, you know that he's, struggling with the Shadow Realm stuff. But any of his, stuff from the Shadowhunter Academy is not really mentioned.
He's grown into himself.
No, yeah, he's been training too with Jem at this point.
And he has, or to deal with the shadow stuff.
Yes.
Most of his story right now is about Grace.
Grace. Whoa.
It is. Well, we see that James has grown from when we first met him. He was concerned about friends. He was isolated. But now he has the support group and he has these friends that he's grown as a person. And he's grown physically. And
now he's hot.
And he's hot. Which Annalite does bring up. She's like, James is very popular.
Before you keep going, I just thought of this. Would you say that the Merry Thieves could also be called the Herondale Boy Support Group?
They're supporting a Herondale boy.
They are
supported from abuse. Inflicted by a Herondale boy. It's a little different. It's the Herondale Boys Support Group, like with apostrophe S.
Yeah, but like, come on! I thought it was funny.
Group of the Herondale Boy.
I thought it fit.
I mean, they do literally. James is like, "Well, I need all four of us to do this thing." They're like, "Okay,
okay, say less,
say less." That I want to talk about that scene. That's hilarious. But yeah,
James is doing better, personally, and he's grown into himself. He's less insecure. Confidence. Yeah, he's got a confidence about him that is very good, very Herondale of him. He's grown into his Herondale-ness.
There's some Herondale-ness happening all over these pages. And I was like, right there it is. There, he was bitten by a duck when he was a kid, so the duck thread is still there. Like, there's.
I wrote that down. And I was like, I love that the ducks thing is just a thread that continues.
Herondales versus ducks. There's a time where he's sassing Charles Buford, and I'm like, there it is. There it is.
The time at the end of the book when the cook at the Fairchild Manor, I think it was, or somebody who's a cook, waves at James with a spoon, and I'm like, spoon!
Oh, spoon! I missed that one, but yeah.
Spoon. But James is dealing with a lot, so let's talk into James' story. So we've got this issue with the shadows. And obviously these demon attacks are new. But something that is happening that James has noticed is happening is that every time that that a demon appears or something tragic has happened, James has been involuntarily pulled to the shadow world. Immediately beforehand. And so he's dealing with this. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I was saying, and the context, we learned too that he's been training to not have that happen. He's been working with Jem for many years to not be involuntarily pulled into the shadow realm. Like every time that his emotions get out of check or anything happens to him, that he can control it now is the big thing. Is that he's mostly in control of it until all this stuff starts happening. And he's not anymore. He has lost control.
He's lost like a
Brother Jemariah, take the wheel.
Brother Jemariah.
Yeah.
So
and then he, yeah.
And then there's Grace.
Dealing with, yeah.
Which, seemingly unrelated at the surface.
Seemingly.
Where Grace is... James knows Grace from... And that's kind of what most of these days past have been telling us, is James' relationship with Grace. James knows Grace because Herondale Manor in Idris is right next to Blackthorn Manor. And so he had been aware of Blackthorn Manor, and there's a tale of him peeping over the wall to see if, because Blackthorn Manor is obviously this decrepit thing that's left to time and whatnot. And then one day Tatiana comes over and requests that he trim back the brambles in front of the gate which is something that is suddenly a problem now, I guess, that she's decided that this young Shadowhunter boy must take care of in the evening one day.
While Will and Tessa and Jem are grieving the loss of Will's parents.
Exactly.
Like,
it's
yeah,
just,
it's the timing is very, yeah.
the timing is
Okay.
odd, but James doesn't know what to do, and it's just like, yeah, I'll go do that. And so he does, and that's where he meets Grace. And then so begins this kind of interesting love affair, where they're stealing visits every year, every summer when he comes to
And
Idris, and he's going...
James is actually literally stealing.
He is literally stealing. Because one day when he visits, Grace is talking about her past, and she's like, oh, well, I have this bracelet that was my parents', but my mother will never let me see it. But you could probably steal it, though, because you told me that you can do this weird shadow thing, right? And James was like, huh? Yeah, I can do that for you.
Oh, goodness.
And so he goes forth, and he uses his shadow powers to get into the box. And he vows to never do it again. As he's gone with the bracelet. And the bracelet has the words, loyalty binds me, I believe is what it says. In Latin, more or less. And then Grace is like, oh, those are the Cartwright words. And then she's looking at the bracelet and she's like, oh, duh, I can't wear it. Because then my mother will know that I got it out of the box and she'll be mad at me. Why don't you wear it?
As a token of our friendship.
And James is like, huh?
Okay.
Listen. I don't like Grace. But I don't know that I'm meant to.
So there's something fishy going on.
There's
a little fishy.
something fishy going on.
I don't like her for using James like that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because James feels almost compelled when he sees Grace.
Compelled, would you say?
I don't know. But when she appears in the ballroom, James's Grace is dancing with Cordelia. And Grace appears and he just fucking nopes.
Drops.
Bye.
Rude.
Yep.
So rude.
It is
so rude.
The audacity of this fool.
And they make some point about how, like, women at that time, like,
Cordelia makes that point. She tells
Cordelia,
him more.
she gives him.
Cordelia does.
Like,
she does something. She's like, I can't ask a man to dance. I can't do this. I can't. I'm at a man's mercy, and you just left me there.
And he was like, I'm sorry.
Reads him for filth.
What? Yeah. To James's credit, he just takes it. He's like, yep.
He's like,
you are correct.
He's like,
okay,
I'll wear a hideous dress next time.
Exactly.
If I offend you again. At least James can recognize that he messed up.
He drinks his respect women juice. He does.
He's a mama's boy.
He is his mama's boy. But so there's that whole thing with Grace, but then we also have this thing with the Shadow Realms, and he decides, and he's alarmed because he's gone to the Shadow Realm every time immediately preceding something bad has happened. And after the picnic, 3 people are severely injured. It's Piers, Wentworth, Barbara Lightwood, and then there's one more.
Is it Ariadne?
It is Ari. And so, he's concerned. This is obviously, like, affected people he cares about now. Thomas is obviously distressed because his sister is hurt. And then Barbara has said something strange to James, too. She said, you can see them, or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
That's where she's seen something strange immediately beforehand. And so he's like, okay, I've got to figure out how to go to the Shadow Realm. I've got to, like, investigate. And so that's
important to note.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's important to note regarding these demon attacks. They're not supposed to be able to come out in the daylight, and that's what they've been doing.
That's true. They did come out during the daylight at the picnic. A storm of supernatural origin came over the place before it was almost creating like a dark cover for the demons to exist. But yeah, very frightening. So the Merry Thieves lock themselves in the ballroom, and James is like, you need to surprise me to get me to go into the Shadow Realm. So they try different things, I think. Yeah. I think
And then
Thomas punches
Matthew.
him. And then
Matthew's
Christopher
words.
shoots out the fucking window of the ballroom. With
And
his
they
bow
think
and
that that's
arrow.
going to draw attention.
Which it does, because Will is like, hello?
What's going on in there?
Like, it's
Jamie?
hilarious.
And then they also waiting for James.
Matthew's like, I'm training in my ballroom.
But Matthew's words of being like, you're cursed and you're going back to where you belong. And I know he doesn't mean it, but it's just like the fact that that's
Yes.
what it is. The words from his Paradebatai saying
yep,
those.
you are cursed.
It hurts. Yeah.
It hurts him something deeply. He knows that it's faked, but
Yeah.
still, hearing those...
He always is gonna. I feel like James is always gonna be afraid. There's a little bit of truth in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, of
it's
course.
his biggest insecurity. You know, and to hear that reflected back from somebody who loves you unconditionally and who you love unconditionally, like, yeah, that's terrible. It works. But it's interesting because when he goes to see Matthew afterwards, Matthew's like, I don't know if I should be bracing for an attack or for what, because Matthew also knows that, you know.
Yeah.
That was shitty.
Speaking of the other Herondale, I feel like mostly what we can talk about with Lucy, aside from Cordelia, which like we kind of already did, I feel like, is Jesse Blackthorne.
Who is this ghost boy?
And why can only Cordelia see him? Not Cordelia, Lucy.
Lucy. Can't be mixing them up already, Melanie.
I am.
It's explained by some necromancy thing that Tatiana did is why
Tatiana
he's the only one who can see him. And I'm just like,
so he explains that he's 17, but he's also 24.
Yeah.
Because he died when he was 17, and I guess it's been however many years that now he's like technically 24 years old.
That's where I must have got 25 for what's his face? Charles Buford from.
Yeah.
Because
That makes
Tatiana
sense.
had to have been pregnant at the same time that
I think she was. I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah.
mentioned that she was.
Yeah.
so they must be close in age, so Charles Buford
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than like 24-ish.
Anyway.
I
like Jesse.
I don't know if I do. Actually,
like,
that's funny.
no.
I don't know. There's something about the mysterious boy trope that I like.
Yeah, jumping into this, I was like, man, I don't remember his intro being such an he was an ass in his intro. I don't remember that.
I don't know if he's an ass.
Kind of.
Are we talking about his
He's a
intro
little
with
smarmy.
Lucy in the forest?
He's
When Lucy
snarky,
was
and
a-
I'm like,
But are we
I
talking
don't
about the
know.
intro
I
of him in the
remember
forest
that.
when Lucy's a little girl, or in the ballroom? At the
both,
at the,
actually.
Both.
A
Yeah,
little bit.
He's a smarmy.
He's a little, yeah. I'm like,
He's a turd.
okay, rude. Yeah.
I know, but when he explains why he didn't tell Lucy his name when she was a little girl, it makes sense to me. Why would he ever think she would see him again?
I mean, it makes sense.
It makes
but
sense. I don't dislike him, but I understand
Oh, no.
Ginny's initial.
I was like, this time, I don't remember
like
it
him.
from last time feeling like that.
So far,
either.
I like him. I think it's just the mysterious boy thing that I'm like, I like that.
I mean, fair. You know, mysterious boys are mysterious.
You got Dilfoil, which is over there, being all.
Okay, well, Cordelia. She's badass, and I love her. She reads
Helplessly in
Mr.
love with James from page 1 or whatever.
She is,
Absolutely.
and Lucy ships it. Lucy, bless her heart. She's like,
Lucy wants Cordelia to be her sister-in-law, and I'm like, I also want that for you.
well, Lucy overheard Matthew and James talking about how a girl is going to come that he's been in love with forever, and she's arriving on an extended stay, and Lucy's like, it must be you, Cordelia.
And then they figure out that it's Grace, and Lucy is like, I feel bad for getting Cordelia's hopes up.
Yeah. She seemed indifferent anyways because Cordelia isn't like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's all internal.
She's too cool to, like,
you
know, to swoon.
She does it internally, but not externally.
Exactly. She's like, oh, you think James might like me? Oh, well, maybe. Well, so you can see where it goes, I guess. I mean, I do need, like, you know, to...
I might need to be married soon here.
And as much as James is, you know, super saying that he's in love with Grace, there's the idea that he has that there's this idea in the back of his mind of he doesn't want Cordelia to get married or something like that.
He's
like, there's these little threads.
He's like, Cordelia marrying somebody feels wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Daisy marrying somebody feels wrong.
Also, the fact that he has a nickname for her, I ship.
Mm-hmm. And Scalding Fever is kind of like chickenpox, but for Shadowhunters.
Yeah.
Where you can only catch it once. So when James catches it at Sirenworth Hall, Cordelia's already had it, and it's just Cordelia and her mom who've already had it, so everyone else is gone. So it's basically James and Cordelia spending this time together, and she reads to him when he's feverish, and holds him when he's cold, and just all these little. So he has these feelings for Cordelia, but every time he tries to like think or expand upon them, they like seem to dissipate in a way.
Or Grace shows up.
And Grace doesn't like it when he talks about Cordelia either.
She feigns that it's fine, but we all know she doesn't like it.
Exactly.
And I like reading is the Herondale connection again, the love connection again, is they always over reading, the books. So yeah.
Yes, the Herondales love to read. Love partners that read.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember Jace being that way, though.
I don't remember that either. We'll have to see. But
I don't.
Herondale Boy trade.
If he's not, I'm gonna chop it up too. Jace being the first Herondale Boy that Cassie Clare wrote.
That's fair.
Yeah, and also like this is a direct like the ties are really strong from like.
It's right next to the tree.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
It's a few different apple trees.
By the time we get over to Moral Interest, we'll have many generations and whatnot.
I know. Anything else we want to mention before I go into my predictions?
Let's see. I love this series. This series.
Oh man,
I like this one a lot.
I do too.
Lucy fucking gets me.
I adore Lucy Herondale so
I do
much.
too. She's fun. I like her a lot.
She is my favorite character in the series, which is very difficult to pick because I really like a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some characters who are unexpectedly become really ones that I enjoy actually too.
And but there's that moment where they're talking about Lucy writing, and she's writing the cruel Prince James or whatever. And James is like, "Do you think that maybe he's boxed in by his name just a little bit?" And Lucy's just like, "I'm not looking for critique at this stage in the creative process," and that sends me.
Oh, I did want to mention briefly. The other reference I was talking about is Devil Tavern is on Fleet Street, so I go, Fleet Street. Is there perhaps a demon barber around named Sweeney Todd?
Maybe.
Perhaps.
Maybe
that was the other reference I wanted to make.
Are really just a barber. It's fine.
That was the reference I wanted to make. Carry on.
And then I was going to say too on Cordelia and Lucy, that like when Lucy's mentioning something, I write down Cordelia's quote and I didn't write down what Lucy was talking about, but about being like weird basically. Mm-hmm. And Cordelia's like, "Who said that? I'll kill them." And I was like, "Goals."
Who insulted you? I shall murder them in their sleep.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. That's the vibe I wish to bring to friendships.
Speaking of insults, for them to be Thomas and Christopher too.
I can't wait for them to be actual parabatai. Like they're saying that they're going to be. I can't wait for actually to be parabatai because I feel like, oh my god, it's going to be so great.
What about Thomas and Christopher?
And it's interesting because girls being parabatai is like a newish thing too at this point.
Oh yeah.
They mentioned that, and I was like, yeah, but I was saying Christopher and Thomas, like, Thomas just insulting Christopher sometimes. He's like, "You daft boot," or something like that. And I was like, that's hilarious.
Christopher just doing his best.
Christopher just doing his best. And Thomas is just like, "You fool!"
Christopher's like, huh?
Christopher just carries on.
Because he spills the demon blood all over everything, right? And then in the very beginning.
That better not be like my sister. Nah, it's from Piers. It's fine.
Doesn't like the demon blood turn into like acid or something?
Yes, it starts burning things.
Oh yeah, yeah, and yeah. I was like, Christopher just stole his blood for the shadow that the Silent Brothers pulled from the.
I'm just gonna take this.
I'm just gonna take this for my experiments. And Thomas was like, "That's not my sister's blood, is it?" He's like, "No, it's Piers."
We briefly saw Henry. And I'm just like, we keep hearing about Charlotte, but when are we gonna see her? I miss my Shadowhunter mom.
Yeah. We'll see her at some point.
Ali's not making sounds that I like.
I have opinions about Charlotte in the series,
but it's a little early to
It's early to talk about it.
Like she was like mischaracterized or something like that.
It's complicated, but
yeah,
I got into it a little bit.
Right now she's just not here.
I miss my Shadowhunter mom.
Kind of sad.
Exactly, but you know who is here? Charles Buford. You know who sucks.
And you know who also
Charles
was there?
Buford.
The ghost of my girl Jessie.
I'm not done talking about Charles Buford.
Okay,
so,
but
listen.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I shall. So, Charles Buford, we see him really shine in this conversation he's having with Will and Jamie, because Jamie comes out of the shadow world after being sent there by following what he thinks is Cortana's light, though I have another thing, put a pin there, because I have something to come back to, somebody remind me. And then he saves Cordelia from the demon, right? Which results in the greenhouse being smashed. And so, of course, Charles and Will are like, Jamie, why did you smash the greenhouse? What are you doing over there? And Jamie's like, well, there was a demon in it. Is anyone concerned about the demon? And they're like, no, we're concerned about why you were there. We knew that there were demons there. It's unfortunate that there was one missed, but like... And then Charles is just being such an ass in this scene. And he's like sassing Will and sassing Jamie. And I'm just like, sir, you are a child. Of course, he's 25. So like, but you know, he's a child compared to Will. And Will's this grown ass man. And he's just, and he's like, well, I act in the interest of the consul in my mother's absence. I'm just like, you know, like, damn.
Will was her son first, bitch.
Will is her firstborn child. Who are you?
Exactly.
And then he's like, well, the Clave thinks that this would happen. And then James, that whole interaction is hilarious.
James
James is like,
this must be so unfortunate for the Clave. And I was like, there it is, the Herondale.
This is where James' Herondale shines.
You mentioned Jem, and I cut this out of my summary, but I was really proud of this. I wrote something down that was like, and then Brother Jemariah shows up.
But in the scene with Charles and Will and James, and then James is like, watch your there's an orangery in Kensington that needs smashing. Watch your greenhouses, because I've been slighted in love. Whatever that was.
He's got that Herondale boy sass.
He got it.
I was cackling.
Got that.
Jamie smash. But no, he must go see Matthew. But circling back to my pin with a relevant point.
Okay.
So, James thinks that he is brought out of the shadows by Cortana's light. But interestingly enough, which obviously, like, and then Cordelia is there. Oh. But if we think back to the days past in Cirenworth when he has a scalding fever, he starts drifting into the shadow realm there. And who brings him out? But Cordelia. So maybe I was going
to mention that in my like predictions.
Maybe
kind of
it's Cordelia that's bringing him out. Of
I was gonna touch on that in my predictions.
Oh yeah.
Should I go ahead, or you guys have something else you want to talk about?
I have more notes. We can touch on them after, since that's a gentle segue into your predictions.
So obviously, I know that James and Cordelia are endgame. This is not news to me. This I know.
Are you sure that? Are you sure you're
yes.
If you've been a part of the fandom, I guess that
because in the Kickstarter updates that I've been getting, there was an email with an image of Cordelia and James and marriage runes.
Well,
there's that.
So, but like, come on, it's Cordelia and James. Like, obviously they're endgame.
Other than though,
it'd be too easy for it to be Grace. It's not Grace, and the hints that Cassie Clare is putting in of Cordelia has this crush on him. James has the idea of Cordelia marrying somebody being wrong. And I love the trope of like, you know, the love interest, the soulmate being the one to pull you back from the brink kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's a good trope.
So I also touched on that too. I originally, before, you know, James basically confirmed it, I thought it was Cordelia's witch light that was the light and not Cortana.
Mm-hmm.
But it could just, as you were saying, it's probably just Cordelia herself, because she is the one who pulled him back from the realm when he was sick.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're endgame, of course. So here's my thing. We know that there has to be a Blackthorn man that has children, because we have the Blackthorns in Mortal Instruments.
Could have cousins.
Could, but they're not mentioned, and it's highly unlikely. There's a little bit of foreshadowing thrown in my opinion. Where I wrote this down, please hold while I look for this. That Jesse talks about when he's talking to Cordelia. Lucy. God, I can't keep doing this.
It's gonna happen. It's fine.
Lucy asks James if, because of the necromancy magic, he hopes he might return to life one day. And I said, that's foreshadowing if I've ever seen it.
I mean, yeah.
Maybe.
And it's going to be Lucy and Jesse as the couple. There was also something very interesting that was mentioned. They called Christopher Kit.
They did call Christopher Kit.
And I know that there is a Kit that is gay and has a relationship with a High Blackthorn, I think.
Using the term relationship is very generous for what's going on there. But there is a Thai Blackthorn.
I keep seeing this connection between a Kit and I think it's a Thai Blackthorn.
It is a Thai. Tiberius Blackthorn.
And so when they called him Kit, I was like, is Christopher this Kit? Because who else would it be?
I don't know.
It wouldn't make sense because there's no other book series that there's a Kit in. And it wouldn't be Dark Artifices because Kit would not be a character that's relevant now. So perhaps. I'm under the impression that they are in love because that's what I get from the internet, but that could just be the internet shipping them.
I know not.
You do, but you're not going to tell me. It's okay.
But I can't tell
I know not. But,
I know it all.
I'm aware you guys aren't going to tell me.
Yeah.
So then that would make 2/3 of the Cicely Gideon Lightwood children gay.
Good for them.
I mean, yeah, good for them.
Right, no, that is Cicely.
Is it? No, because Thomas is
Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Anna is Cicely
and then Gideon and Sophie. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Thomas is Gideon and Sophie.
Huh?
Thomas is Gideon and Sophie's son.
Yes.
Thomas is Gideon and Sophie.
Yes. Okay. That's what I'm saying. 2/3 of the Gabriel and Cicely children gay.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Ha!
Therefore being Anna and Kit. And Alexander is a baby. Therefore.
Yes.
Okay. I'm following now.
Alistair, I feel like is going to have some big character development where he doesn't suck anymore because they mentioned that he's insecure about his appearance and his dark hair and his dark eyes. I feel like we're going to get more to him.
I will point out on your ship notes that I wrote down, like, again, whether, this is not me confirming or denying ships here, but I will say that the trope of, I wrote down, like, page 55 where Cordelia's like, James, her James, and then Lucy also has this moment of the boy from the forest, her boy, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's good. I like that one.
Yeah.
I also have, as far as...
Go ahead.
I have some romance notes as well. Matthew mentions Lucy a few times in an interesting way. I think it's in one of the past stories where he mentions wanting to, like, fix her hair bow, but doesn't want to take the liberty to do so, And then in this one, he makes a comment about it's not safe for Lucy. And then he's like, oh, for anybody. He kind of, like, follows it up and brushes it past. So, that's a thing that I noticed.
It's a little detail that Grace cries out in pain when Cordelia touches her.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there.
That's right.
That was a...
But I don't think this is what happens, but I said, because it's mentioned that Tatiana has kept, like, this husk of one of the clockwork, army creatures. I was like, I don't think this is happening. But how ironic would it be if Grace was actually a super evolved clockwork creature and not a real
That'd be hilarious.
I don't think that's what's happening.
Very fun.
I don't think that's what's going to happen. But it's just the detail of Grace being in pain when Cordelia touches her. Something's not right there. Grace is. I mean, we already knew something's going on with Grace.
I mean, that was a specific moment I wrote down too, and I was like, I don't know what's happening here, honestly, because I don't remember.
We already know that. I just interpret it as, like, Grace trying to get her mother's attention.
Maybe. Possible. That's possible too.
Maybe there's more there.
I don't know. Obviously, there's something not fully truth about Grace. There's something about Grace that we haven't learned yet. We don't know who she actually is.
Right.
I don't believe that she's actually a Cartwright.
Okay.
That's fair. I don't know. Well, we did, and we met her briefly in that past story that we read, where Magnus is also like, something's weird about this girl.
Exactly. So I've got that too of Magnus is like, and how she was like, how her attitude was with Magnus, and this bracelet. The fact that she gets James to steal it for her, and then is like, oh, why don't you wear it? And loyalty binds me. I feel like it's like James is gonna try and take it off one day and realizes he can't.
Oh.
Like it's like cursed kind of thing.
Maybe.
I think those are my basic predictions for now.
I
don't
about our
have any
Shadowhunters in love.
Yeah.
Loosely again, because we haven't talked about Thomas or Anna as far as their love things. But
I was just
did have
about
an
to say.
Thomas has an interesting line where he says, "We don't always love people who deserve it."
Yeah.
And I was like
hello.
I was like, what pain have you seen,
I
boy?
did clock that, and I'm just like, hello. Barbara and Oliver, I don't know. I mean, I know they're like almost betrothed. They're either engaged or to be engaged or something like that.
Is the word.
Who knows if that's gonna last, because anything can happen in the Shadowhunter books. Anna, I got nothing right now.
She's out here breaking.
Anna is a heartbreaker. Some girl is crying on her.
I was like,
doorstep.
who's Evangeline? Did I miss something?
No, she's just this girl who Anna took to bed and then was like, yeah. I thought
And
the
then
other girls didn't mean anything,
mom-
and Anna just like, they didn't, and neither did
The
you.
mom
And I was
mistook
like,
Anna for a man, and I was like, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It is, and Anna's like, probably better that way, actually. It's just.
Oh, I don't know if this is a
I want to be
prediction,
Anna
but
Lightwood.
I don't know if this is a necessary prediction, but this was my final note. Somehow, in every generation, there's a problem that Clave is either ignoring or not handling right, and it's up to the protagonist to fix it. It's almost as if they're characters in a book.
But and like in this book, it's particularly hilarious because they're like, we can't tell our parents. We're just like fools. If you knew the shit your parents got up to at your age, then you would be
Your parents
more
were in the Clockwork War. You think they wouldn't understand?
Right.
Exactly.
And I said this about James and him about the Shadow Realm and not telling Will. It's like, Will would absolutely understand.
Will would.
Oh, yeah.
He married a warlock.
He would. That scene where they're like, Will's coming. Like, that's just hilarious. They're like, it's my father.
Why are you shooting out my ballroom windows?
Yeah. It's like, he's not here. You go away. I heard you. They're breaking glass. What do you mean? You're like, job. Yeah, like, we're pregnant. It's been an emotional day, okay? They're all just like, and James is like, you guys go so that I'm the only one who gets in trouble, and then like, yeah, it's just a whole arch show.
Anyway.
It's a whole thing.
Ugh.
Anyways, I'm very excited to see where these fools take us.
Yep.
I'm excited to like actually be able to keep up with time jumps.
It's coming. But yeah, 2 weeks from now. Actually, not 2 weeks from now.
I think we said like there'll be 3 this time.
3 weeks. So the 27th of January.
Okay. I'll be here.
Yeah, and we'll be here with the next until part 2, whatever chapters those are.
Yeah. But my one quote that I pulled right from the end of this too that I like a lot is when Anna and Cordelia are hanging out, having tea or whatever, and then Anna's like, "Would you like to be a muse?" And then Cordelia's like, "No, I would like to be a hero." And I was like, iconic.
And Anna's like, "I knew there was a reason I liked you."
Yep.
She's great.
Yeah.
And more of her to come.
Anyway.
Until then.
It's fun
to
not knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
For once.
It is fun. 8 through the end of 14.
8 through the end of 14.
And I know you guys aren't going to tell me anything, but I'm just like, I'm going to watch their facial expressions. I'm watching you.
Watching us. Just the
I'm
way,
listening to the noises that Allie makes.
like a silent brother, if you will.
Like those noises?
Not exactly what I meant, but yes.
No? Okay. Until then, have a good reading. Happy reading. More
Happy New Year.
Reading.
Happy New Year.
Read
Yes.
things.
Read more in 2024.
Maybe.
Buy more books.
Yeah.
I have to get through my whole TBR, so we'll see how that goes. Check back with me at the end of the year.
For reals.
We'll be here. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.